Hello, thank you to the moderator and to AWE 2020. I'm BC Biermann and my talk is Confessions of an Augmented Mind. Just a quick little intro. I've been in the AR space, particularly in public space art, large AR murals, mostly on the sides of buildings and in urban spaces. And I just wanted to sort of give a recap over the past, let's say, decade or so of some of our work and talk about trials and tribulations and errors and pitfalls and things we've learned along the way. Just to sort of give a little backstory in terms of my interest in this space, I'm a huge Blade Runner fan. I mean, every chance I get that was on Channel 11, I would watch it no matter what. And what really drew me to Blade Runner was this really compelling vision of a future city. The sort of interactive screens, the moodiness, the Vangelis soundtrack, everything about it really captured me. And that's really stuck with me ever since. And I'm sure I'm not alone in my fondness for that film and its impact on me in my life. So ever since then, I've been desperately seeking the future city. And what that really looks like for me in AR is this sort of intermixing of digital imagery and public urban spaces. So with Matayo's now defunct technology, well, I guess they're Apple's using it, so it's not defunct. But in terms of the early days of Matayo, we used their feature tracking. And this is back when I sort of had to use my SQL databases and so forth. So it's a pretty rudimentary, at least compared to natural feature tracking as it is now. And we used that to overlay billboards in Times Square with AR art. And we worked with street artists whose work was really sort of geared towards public spaces. We went on to augment the Bowery Wall in New York using the same technology stack. And in this case, we resurrected all the murals that are on this wall or have been on this wall over the past 5 or 6 years or so, and sort of resurrected the murals in situ. We went on to collaborate with a muralist named Momo in St. Louis. He did the mural side and we just did the AR side. And then we started experimenting in terms of much more interactivity, allowing people to compose the space using AR. So what AR really allows us to do is allow others to be much more active in the public spaces. So we did this for a number of years and we felt like it was good, but we wanted to control the entire pipeline from the creative side to the deployment in the cities. How this works is generally myself or a member on our team, which I'm the creative director, draws up a sketch. We have a number of ideas. My partner, Chris Nunez and Jordan Seiler, we sort of brainstorm through a bunch of concepts that we find interesting philosophically. And then we push this into generally Cinema 4D. That's my creative vehicle of choice, that and After Effects. And we create the mural render. And this has to be rendered at huge sizes. So for example, the one we did at Qualcomm, that was 185 feet by 35 feet and has to be rendered at full res. What you're looking at here is what we did for the University of Geneva. So what we do in cinema then goes into, of course, Unity. And then those assets generally move back and forth between Unity and Cinema 4D. It's nice because what we create in cinema as the mural render just gets ported into Unity. So there's a really one-to-one relationship between what you see on the building in terms of the mural side and then what pops out in AR. So you can see the pipeline from the sketch to Cinema 4D to Unity, and then here is the piece on the side of what was then in 2016 a new medical building at the University of Geneva, and then you can see the AR in the bottom left on the device. This is one that we did at South by Southwest Interactive. Another really big piece. This is 85 feet, I think, by 35 feet. And again, you can see it through the device in AR. This was particularly difficult working with 180, I think, 6 foot by 3 foot sheets of wheat paste that Jordan Seiler and I did over a period of 3 days and sometimes driving rain. So a miracle that we got accomplished, but we did. And some of the really difficulties that we always encounter in doing these projects are lighting, not being able to control the lighting, working with daytime and nighttime lighting. Are there street lights there? Are there things blocking the people's view? Buses. You can see in the bottom left, there's sort of a large storage container that we had to deal with. So there's a number of things in working on this scale that you don't really see in smaller scales, and especially if you're working small scale indoor. This was in San Francisco for San Francisco Design Week. This is on the Pier building. I believe it was Pier 29. That's where the cruise ships come in. But in this one, we wanted to sort of push the limits in terms of allowing people to interact with the mural, but then also having that digital become a physical thing. So the thing that you're seeing in the center there, that is the back of a chair. And then you can actually, in AR, touch that chair, and then it pulls out in 3D space, but then also it'll send you an STL file and you can 3D print that chair. This was a piece in Moscow, and this is where we did some data viz. And through the data viz, this is actually all of the cultural institutions in Moscow pulled into cinema using a Python script. That was then meshed around a skull. And actually, so what you saw on that first slide or that last slide then became this skull shape for the mural side of things. And then we allowed people to sort of interact with all those pieces on the ground in Moscow. A bit of a similar piece here. This is at the Carnegie and Pittsburgh recently. Again, working with public data sets through the city of Pittsburgh, where we mapped out all of the playgrounds and parks in the city of Pittsburgh, and then sort of through the same process in cinema using Python, pulled all those data sets into cinema and then wrapped them around this skull mesh. And before I get to some of our new work, I want to play a video of our past work and sort of tie this all into a bow and then talk about what we're sort of doing in the future in our current work. So that video can play now. So I think from that sizzle, you can see as these pieces are all put together in quick sequence, that it really allows people to interact with these public spaces and these urban spaces in a new and we think an interesting way. And like when we talk about the future city, it's this idea of this really meaningful sort of interactivity that we think art is just a part of. And I want to touch more on that in a minute, this future vision. But just to pull you back into where we're at now, we're actually now working with physical sculptures. And what you're seeing here is a render of one of the sculptures that we're doing for Marriott in Anaheim. They've launched a new hotel not that far from Disneyland. And this is one of the pieces called Seed. You've seen the concept render on a cinema, but we've actually, here's a process piece that's being, or has actually now been built by a company, a fabricator in Denver that we've worked with and has done a great job for our pieces. We're augment these pieces as well. This is something that we're sort of pushing ourselves into, is augmenting physical things in the real world as opposed to just flat surfaces. So 3D shapes and sculptures in particular. Here's another piece from that same project called Chimay. And then here's the piece being fabricated. So now with point cloud tracking, this really sort of opens up a new world for us in terms of not just having to work with flat surfaces, but pushing ourselves to work with 3D physical shapes. And we found that the tracking using some of these point cloud systems has been pretty robust. And allowed us to expand our work in ways that we find like really interesting. But again, pushing our stuff out into physical spaces, which I think is really important in AR, and is something that VR really just doesn't allow for. So finally, I just kind of want to wrap things up. For us and my work with Heavy.io, and for myself and Chris Nunez and Jordan Seiler, this has always really been about the ideas behind the work. We've been interested in activating public spaces, democratizing public spaces. And for us, AR was a really great way to do that. So this is built out some of my academic work. And now just at the conclusion of this, I want to talk about how this pushes into the ethics side of things. We all get sort of really wrapped up into problem solving and using these technologies and getting it to work and getting the apps to work and deployed and so forth. But it is a little bit about the ethics, the philosophy side of things that we find really interesting, and that the tech sits on top of. So this idea of the universal visual browser, for this to be a really seamless experience, it does need to get pushed into the cloud. And all the interactivity, the assets, the optimization, all the data sets need to live in the cloud and then be pushed in real time to these devices in a way that's contextual, in a way that's meaningful, and ultimately in a way that is ethical. So what I mean by that is, and I'll just sort of wrap things up on this last point, is, what we're doing needs to be thought through in terms of how people interact with it. Is it, or do we allow people to opt in? Are we just flooding them with ads? What is the right way to do this? So I've been a part of ethically aligned design. The final, I believe, draft comes out this fall. I would encourage everybody to start thinking along those lines of being proactive and how you deploy this technology. Does it have some sort of social value to it or a component that you find socially interesting? And on top of, yes, it's cool, it's fun, but how are we doing this in a way that is ethically and socially responsible in terms of its impact on society, which I think is going to be really sort of profound, especially when all these components sort of fit together seamlessly. The UVB, the Universal Visual Browser, optimize and relevant content, and a filtration system that allows people to opt in and get the content they need in a contextual and dynamic and an interesting way that's a value add to their life as opposed to sort of a visual clutter of ads and things that they haven't opted into. So I'm going to wrap things up with that. If you'd like to stay in touch with me, any questions that you've got about doing pieces in public spaces, I'm happy to share any and all lessons that we've learned along the way, for better or for worse. And please reach out to me, and I'm happy to start a conversation. So thank you to AWE. Thank you to the moderator, and I'm happy to open this up for any and all questions. Here.
Jan Tiki wants to know if there's any plans, like AR plans for Seattle.
Oh, good question. No. I did a little bit of work up in, the closest was up in Vancouver for SIGGRAPH, I think 2 years ago. But no immediate plans for Seattle. Would love to get there though.
Okay. Consuelo Morano wants to know, how do people know there is an AR part in the art? So like how they can access it.
Yeah, great question.
Right.
That's frankly not something we're great at. And we're open to suggestions ourselves. We spend so much time and effort on the production part, on the installation part. You know, we're artists and thinkers, and then the PR and the marketing is sort of an afterthought for us in a lot of cases. You know, for example, we did that huge piece at Qualcomm, and then, you know, as a part of the mural, there's this small little section that says, hey, this is AR enabled. Same thing in Austin. So, you know, naively, maybe when we started this, we thought, hey, if we do enough of this and people start doing enough of this, over time, it just creates an expectation that, hey, if something is in public space, there may be a digital component to it. I don't think that expectation has been created just yet, but we put signage typically next to the pieces to tell people, hey, you got to download the app, and then it's AR enabled.
Good point. Zoltan Batha wants to know, are all these solutions done with Unity/Vuforia? And are they all markerless?
Okay, so good question. There, a lot of the murals are done with, well, everything is done with Unity, but we don't always use Vuforia as the tracking solution. So, for example, on some of the more recent works, we were collaborating with 6D, but they they're required by Niantic, so actually we're using ARKit for 3D tracking solution, like point cloud tracking solutions for physical structures. But for the earlier stuff, really almost exclusively Unity Vuforia plugin. But now we're sort of moving into more 3D structures, so we're looking at more like point cloud solutions like ARKit.
Great. And which projects, Regina Beck wants to know, which projects are planned in the future? Is there a chance for a co-creative process? Maybe that could be a sidebar conversation.
Yeah, so I think there was a couple examples in the talk about how we collaborated with other artists. The one in St. Louis, Momo in particular, I think I covered. We're doing one right now in New York. I can't, unfortunately, disclose the exact location in New York just yet, but we're doing a building in New York and collaborating with another muralist on a piece that I think will be, don't necessarily quote me on this, but I think it'll be the first public art project launched in New York post-COVID when they start to open up.
Wow.
So yeah, we're open to collaborations. We collaborated in a project in Atlanta.
And we're open to working with other artists, and we like to actually work with other artists in the cities that we go into, because we don't want to see ourselves sort of colonizing public space, and so it's always nice to work with local people.
Absolutely. And if we had to ask, if more people have more questions or wants to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
They can email me at BC, B as in boy, C as in Christopher, at heavy.io, bc@heavy.io. And they can also just go to the website, heavy.io, and get to me through the contact form there. Great.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was great. This was a great talk. So interesting.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I appreciate the questions. And anybody can follow up with me via email.
Okay, great. Thank you.